She stood in a wedding dress that cost more than her old apartment, waiting to marry a billionaire. But 6 months ago, she was just a single mom watching her 8-year-old son lying motionless on the concrete. The man in the $10,000 suit had thrown himself into traffic for a kid he'd never met, for a woman he didn't know existed. But here's what'll mess with your head. He'd been standing on that exact corner every single week, same day, same time, for 5 years straight. So, when little Marcus chased his soccer ball into the street, Alexander Reeves was already there, waiting. Some called it fate. Others whispered darker things, because Alexander Reeves didn't just save random children. He collected broken families. Sarah would be the 4th single mother he'd rescued, but she'd be the first to discover why he really stood on that corner. The first to learn what happened to his own son. The first to realize that sometimes the person doing the saving is the one who's drowning. In the next hour, you'll watch 2 shattered people accidentally build something neither of them was looking for. You'll see a little boy teach a billionaire how to laugh again, and you'll understand why Sarah's hands shook as she signed those divorce papers 3 years ago, but remained perfectly steady as she said, "I do," to a man who started as a stranger who saved her whole world. But before we get there, before I tell you about the waiting room confession that changed everything, before you understand why his ex-wife showed up to their wedding in tears of joy, not jealousy, hit that subscribe button. Because if you leave without hearing how this ends, you'll spend the rest of your day wondering what kind of man stands on the same street corner where his child died every single week. And trust me, the answer will break you before it heals you, just like it broke them. Let me take you back to that Tuesday, 2:47 p.m., when a soccer ball rolled into traffic and 2 futures collided at exactly the wrong moment, which turned out to be exactly the right one. Sarah Chen had exactly 17 minutes left on her lunch break. She'd counted, calculated, the way single mothers do when every second matters and every minute costs something you can't afford to lose. Her shift at Street Mary's pediatric ward started at 3. Dr. Williams didn't tolerate lateness. Neither did the stack of bills sitting unopened on Sarah's kitchen counter. But Marcus had begged, "Just 5 more minutes at the park, Mom. Please, 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 please." He bounced beside her on the sidewalk, that new soccer ball clutched against his chest like treasure. It had cost her an extra shift last weekend. 12 hours on her feet, changing bedpans and comforting crying parents and pretending her own feet weren't screaming for mercy. Worth it, though. Worth every aching minute when she saw his face light up at the sporting goods store. 5 more minutes, she agreed. Then we have to go. Mom has work. You always have work. The accusation landed soft but sharp, the way only children can wound you with truth. I know, baby, but work means food and clothes and the apartment. I know. He kicked the ball against the park fence. I just wish. Wish what? He shrugged. 8 years old and already learning to swallow his wants, it broke her heart every single time. Nothing. Can we get ice cream after your shift? If you do your homework without complaining. Deal. The ball escaped his feet, rolled toward the street, and time did that thing it does when the universe is about to shatter your entire existence. It slowed. Sarah saw it happen in fragments, snapshots. A horror movie playing frame by frame, the ball bouncing off the curb, Marcus lunging after it without looking, the bus, massive and unstoppable, barreling through the intersection, the driver's face, twisted in terror, hands yanking the wheel too late. She screamed. At least, she thinks she screamed. Her mouth opened, sound came out, but it felt distant, underwater, like someone else was using her voice. And then, a blur of motion from the corner. A man in a dark suit, moving faster than physics should allow. He collided with Marcus mid-stride, wrapped his body around her son like a shield, and threw them both toward the sidewalk. The bus clipped them anyway. The impact sent them spinning. Marcus landed on the grass beside the sidewalk. The man, the stranger, wasn't so lucky. His head met concrete with a sound Sarah would hear in her nightmares for years. Crack. Wet. Final. Wrong. She ran. Forgot her training. Forgot her 12 years of nursing experience. Forgot everything except the small body lying too still on the grass. "Marcus! Marcus, baby, can you hear me? Marcus!" His eyes fluttered, opened, focused on her face. "Mom?" His voice came out wobbly, confused. But there, alive, present. Oh, God. Oh, thank God. Don't move, baby. Don't move. Mommy's here. Mommy's right here. She ran her hands over him, checking, assessing. A bump on his forehead, scrapes on his palms, his left ankle already swelling, but no blood, no compound fractures, no... Mom. The man. Sarah's head snapped toward the stranger. He lay 5 feet away, perfectly still. Dark hair matted with something red. Eyes closed. Chest barely moving. But his lips were curved upward. Just slightly, almost imperceptibly, he was smiling. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called 911. Sarah couldn't remember if it was her. Couldn't remember anything except the way this stranger had thrown himself into traffic for a child he'd never met. "Stay with Marcus," she ordered a bystander. The mom instinct warred with the nurse instinct, but training won. She crawled to the man's side, pressed her fingers to his neck, pulse, thready but present. "Sir? Sir? Can you hear me? My name is Sarah. I'm a nurse. Help is coming. Can you open your eyes for me?" His lids flickered, parted, and she found herself staring into the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. Ocean blue, grief blue, the kind of blue that had seen too much and felt too deeply. "The boy," he rasped. "Is he? He's okay. He's going to be okay. Because of you." The smile widened, just a fraction. Then his eyes rolled back and he went limp. But she didn't know. This was the same corner where he'd lost everything 5 years ago. The ambulance doors burst open at St. Mary's Medical Center. Sarah had ridden in the back, one hand gripping Marcus's fingers, the other pressed against the stranger's chest, monitoring, praying, doing the only thing she knew how to do when the world fell apart. Work the problem, save the patient, fall apart later. "Mom, is he going to die?" "No, baby. He's going to be fine." She didn't know that. Couldn't know that. Head injuries were tricky, unpredictable. She'd seen patients walk and talk and joke, then code 6 hours later from a bleed nobody caught. But you don't tell an 8-year-old that. You lie with your whole chest and pray you're not wrong. The ER erupted into controlled chaos when they arrived. Sarah knew this dance, had performed it hundreds of times from the other side, but standing here as a patient's mother, watching strangers wheel her son through double doors, hearing the stranger's gurney crash through to Trauma Bay 2, this was different. This was terrifying. This was every nightmare she'd ever had made, flesh and fluorescent lighting. "Sarah!" Dr. Patricia Williams appeared, gripping her shoulders. "Sarah, look at me. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." "Marcus. He's stable. Concussion, likely mild. Some contusions. We're running a CT to be safe, but he was conscious and responsive the whole ride. That's good. That's really good." "And the man?" "The one who..." Patricia's expression flickered, just for a second, but Sarah caught it. "What? What is it?" "He's refusing treatment." "What?" "Won't let anyone touch him. Keeps asking about your son." We can't get him to. Sarah was already moving. Past the nurse's station, through the double doors, into Trauma Bay 2, where a man in a destroyed designer suit was arguing with 3 doctors while blood dripped down his face. I said I'm fine. Where's the boy? Is the boy okay? Someone tell me if the boy is... He's okay. Everyone turned. The man's eyes locked on Sarah's. That same ocean blue, that same drowning depth. The boy, he repeated. Your son. He's okay? Minor concussion. Some scrapes. His ankle might be sprained. She stepped closer, noted the gash on his temple, the way his pupils weren't quite even, the tremor in his hands. You, on the other hand, need stitches, and a CT scan, and possibly a psych evaluation for throwing yourself in front of a bus. I didn't throw myself. You, literally, threw yourself. I watched you do it, in slow motion, like some kind of insane superhero with a death wish. The room went quiet. Sarah rarely raised her voice, but adrenaline and fear and 12 different emotions she couldn't name were crashing through her system like a flash flood. The man blinked. Then, impossibly, he laughed. It was a rusty sound, unused, like a door hinge that hadn't been oiled in years. Insane superhero with a death wish, he repeated. That's actually pretty accurate. Sit down. He sat on the exam table, like a scolded child, and Sarah grabbed the suture kit from the nearest tray. Dr. Williams, I've got this. Can you check on my son? Sarah, you're not on duty. I'm not asking as an employee. I'm asking as someone who needs to keep her hands busy, or she's going to have a complete breakdown in front of a stranger. Please. Patricia hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. Sarah turned back to the man. His eyes hadn't left her face, following her movements with an intensity that should have been unsettling but somehow wasn't. This is going to sting, she warned. I know. She cleaned the wound, precise, professional, focused on the task instead of the chaos in her chest. What's your name? She asked. Alexander. Alexander Reeves. The name tickled something in her memory. She'd heard it before, somewhere, but she couldn't place it through the fog of adrenaline. Well, Alexander Reeves, you're very lucky. Another inch to the left and we'd be having a very different conversation. Lucky. He said the word like it tasted foreign. I haven't felt lucky in a very long time. You saved my son's life. I'd call that lucky. I didn't save him. I just reacted. Same thing. No, his voice hardened. It's not. Sarah paused, needle hovering. Something in his tone raised every maternal alarm she possessed. This wasn't just adrenaline crash. This wasn't normal post-trauma response. This was something older, deeper, heavier. But before she could probe further, Marcus's voice drifted from the hallway. Mom? Where's the man who flew? Alexander's breath caught. Actually caught, like someone had punched him in the chest. Flew, he whispered. He thinks I flew. Kids are dramatic. He probably thinks you're Superman. I'm not Superman. The words came out broken, raw. I'm not anyone's hero. Sarah finished the last stitch, set down her tools, and did something she never did with patience. She took his hand. You are to him, she said quietly, whether you like it or not. And just when she thought he'd leave, he started showing up for the night shifts. Marcus was discharged after 2 days. Minor concussion, sprained ankle, strict orders for rest and monitoring. Sarah expected that to be the end of it. The handsome stranger would disappear back to whatever life he came from. She'd send a thank you card, maybe, try to find his address somehow, and that would be that. But Alexander Reeves didn't disappear. The gifts started arriving on day 3. A gaming system worth more than Sarah's monthly rent, delivered by a nervous man in a uniform who kept apologizing for the size of the box. Then designer clothes for Marcus. Then a signed jersey from his favorite soccer player. How had Alexander even known Marcus liked soccer? Sarah sent them all back. "I appreciate the gesture," she wrote in a note, "but we can't accept this. Please stop." The next day, a smaller box arrived. Inside, a simple get-well card and a stuffed elephant wearing a tiny soccer jersey. "For Marcus," the note read. "I promise this one's not expensive. I checked 3 times. Marcus loved it, named it Alexander Jr., slept with it every night. Sarah didn't have the heart to return it. Then came the hospital visits. The first time, she thought it was a coincidence. She was working the night shift, her usual 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., when she spotted a familiar figure in the pediatric ward. Alexander sat beside a little girl's bed, a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are open in his hands. "Let the wild rumpus start," he read, his voice low and gentle and nothing like the sharp-edged businessman the nurses had described. Sarah watched from the doorway. The girl, Lily, 6 years old, leukemia, giggled at his monster voices. Her parents dozed in the corner, exhausted from weeks of worry. Alexander finished the story, tucked the blanket around Lily's shoulders, and sat there, perfectly still, as she drifted off to sleep. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked when he emerged. He startled, caught. "I couldn't sleep." "So you came to a hospital?" "It's quiet here. At night, peaceful. Most people find hospitals the opposite of peaceful. Most people haven't spent as much time in them as I have." There was something in those words, something heavy and wounded and carefully hidden, but Sarah was too tired to excavate, too worn down from her own battles to take on someone else's. "Visiting hours ended at 9, she said instead. "I know, but Lily's parents needed a break, and she gets scared when she wakes up alone." "How do you know what Lily needs?" "She told me. Last week." "Last week?" "I've been coming for a while, reading to the kids who can't sleep." He shrugged, almost embarrassed. "It helps. Them and me." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. So she said the only thing that made sense: "The coffee in the break room is terrible. But there's a vending machine on the 3rd floor that has decent hot chocolate." It wasn't an invitation, not exactly. But he smiled, that rusty, unpracticed smile, and somehow she felt like she'd given him something precious. The visits became routine. Every night she worked, Alexander appeared. He never announced himself, never interrupted, just materialized in the pediatric ward like a well-dressed ghost, armed with children's books and endless patience. Sarah started leaving coffee at the nurse's station. Black, 2 sugars. She didn't ask how he took it, she'd noticed during his hospital stay, when Patricia had brought him a cup. He never said thank you out loud, but the cup was always empty when she circled back, and sometimes there was a new book in the break room. Authors she'd mentioned loving once, in passing, during a 3 a.m. lull when they were both too tired to maintain their walls. The other nurses noticed. "Your billionaire is here again," Tanya would report, grinning. "He's not my anything." "That's why he only drinks the coffee you leave. Ignores everyone else's. He's just being polite." "Honey, rich men aren't polite. They're strategic. And that man is strategizing his way into your life whether you like it or not." But it didn't feel like strategy. It felt like a need. Like Alexander didn't know how to function without purpose, without someone to care for, without a reason to show up somewhere. And Sarah understood that better than she wanted to admit. But what she didn't know was that his ex-wife was watching everything unfold. The woman appeared on a Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock, visiting hours. Sarah was reviewing charts at the nurse's station when the elevator doors opened and something that looked like a magazine cover stepped out, blonde, elegant, wearing heels that cost more than Sarah's car, moving with a kind of confidence that only comes from never worrying about money. "Miss Chen," the woman extended a manicured hand. "I'm Catherine Reeves, Alexander's former wife." Sarah's defenses slammed up so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash. "If you're here to warn me away from your ex-husband, I should tell you there's nothing going on between us. He visits the children's ward sometimes. That's all." "I know." Catherine's smile was tired, kind, nothing like what Sarah expected. "I'm not here to warn you away. I'm here to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "May I sit?" They found a quiet corner of the waiting room. Catherine crossed her ankles, folded her hands, every movement controlled and graceful, like a dancer who'd forgotten how to relax. "Alexander's housekeeper called me last week," Catherine began. "Maria has worked for him for 15 years. She's never called me before, not once in the 3 years since our divorce." "What did she want?" "To tell me he's sleeping." Sarah blinked. "Sleeping?" "Through the night, for the first time in 5 years." Catherine's composure cracked, just slightly. She found him in the kitchen last Sunday, making breakfast. Actual breakfast. Eggs and toast and orange juice. Like a normal person. He was humming. Humming. Alexander hasn't hummed since. She stopped, took a breath. Since Daniel. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd heard it before. Whispered by nurses, mentioned in old magazine articles she'd definitely not been reading at 2 a.m. Daniel Reeves, age 8, killed in a pedestrian accident 5 years ago. The same corner, the same time of day, the same terrible intersection. "Oh, God," Sarah breathed. He was in Tokyo, some merger that felt so important at the time. Catherine's voice went distant. His flight was delayed. He was stuck in a conference room, arguing about stock prices, while our son— "You don't have to." "I do, because you need to understand." Catherine met her eyes. Alexander blamed himself, still does. He decided that if he'd been there, on that corner, at that moment, he could have saved Daniel. The way he saved your son. Everything clicked. The weekly visits to that intersection, the throwing himself into traffic, the rusty smile of a man who hadn't expected to survive. He wasn't trying to save Marcus, Sarah realized. He was trying to. Trade places. Yes, Catherine nodded. He's been standing on that corner every Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. for 5 years. The exact day and time Daniel was hit. Waiting for, I don't know, a chance to do it differently. A way to go back and be the father he thinks he should have been. That's not healthy. No, it's not. I begged him to see someone, get therapy, but Alexander Reeves doesn't admit weakness. He just haunts. So why are you telling me this? Catherine studied her for a long moment, taking her measure, weighing something invisible. Because you're different. The other mothers? Wait, other mothers? You didn't know? Catherine's eyebrows rose. There have been 3 others. Patricia Martinez, single mother, son, had leukemia. He paid for treatment. Set up a college fund. Disappeared after 6 months. Angela White, car accident survivor. He covered all her expenses, helped her rebuild, gone within a year. Kumiko Tanaka, let me guess. House fire, single mom. He swooped in, saved the day, then vanished? You're catching on. Sarah's chest tightened. She didn't know what she was feeling. Betrayal? That was stupid. They weren't anything to each other. Disappointment? Why should she care if Alexander Reeves collected broken families like stamps? But she did. God help her, she did. So I'm number 4, she said flatly. Another project, another way to work through his guilt. That's what I thought, until Maria called. Catherine leaned forward. He never stayed for the others, Sarah. Helped them, yes. Cared about them, in his way. But he never learned their coffee orders. Never read stories to their sick neighbors' children. never hummed while making breakfast. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying something's different. With you. With your son. Something that's bringing my ex-husband back to life, and I came here to ask you, beg you, if necessary, not to run away when it gets complicated." "When what gets complicated?" Catherine stood, smoothed her skirt, every inch the society wife, even now. "James, Alexander's brother, he's been looking for an excuse to declare Alexander unfit for years. The company board is getting restless, and Alexander's eccentricities, the corner visits, the hospital nights, the anonymous donations, they don't play well in boardrooms. That's not my problem." "No, it's not." Catherine handed her a business card. "Heavy cardstock, elegant script, but it might become your problem if whatever's happening between you and Alexander continues." She was halfway to the elevator before she turned back. "For what it's worth, I hope it does continue. Alexander deserves to be happy. He just forgot how." Her smile turned wistful. "Maybe you can remind him." The elevator doors closed, and Sarah stood alone, holding a business card that felt like a warning and a blessing and a complication she absolutely did not need. That night, Sarah discovered that Alexander had been anonymously paying off medical debts for families throughout the ward, hundreds of them, millions of dollars, all tied to one devastating requirement: complete anonymity. If anyone found out, the payments would stop. Here's the thing about falling in love. It doesn't happen all at once. Not really. The movies lie, the books lie. That thunderbolt moment? Pure fiction. Real love is slower, quieter. It sneaks up on you through 1,000 tiny moments you don't even notice until they've already changed you. For Sarah and Alexander, it started with coffee, then Chinese food. Alexander claimed he was ordering for himself and accidentally got too much, every Tuesday night, for 3 weeks straight. "You don't even like Kung Pao chicken," Sarah pointed out. "How would you know?" "Because you've given me your portion, every single time." He didn't have an answer for that, just shrugged and stole an egg roll off her plate. Then came soccer. Marcus had been cleared for light activity, and his league was starting up again. Sarah worked most Saturday mornings, which meant Marcus usually sat on the bench while she arranged last-minute sitters, until Alexander showed up. "What are you doing here?" Sarah had asked, finding him on the sidelines in designer jeans that had clearly never seen a soccer field. Marcus mentioned the schedule. "I wasn't doing anything, so you drove 40 minutes to watch 8-year-olds kick a ball around? They're very talented 8-year-olds. They're terrible. Marcus scored on his own goal last week. Enthusiastic, then. Very enthusiastic 8-year-olds. She'd laughed. Actually laughed. And Alexander had looked at her like she'd handed him a winning lottery ticket. After that, he came every Saturday. Started teaching Marcus footwork during halftime. Nothing flashy, just patient, quiet instruction from a man who clearly knew the sport. "Where'd you learn soccer?" Marcus asked one afternoon. "Played in college, before I got boring and became a businessman." "You're not boring. You threw yourself in front of a bus. That's the opposite of boring." "That's one way to look at it." Marcus squinted up at him. "Why did you do it? Throw yourself in front of the bus?" The question hung there, heavy, dangerous. Sarah held her breath. Alexander crouched down to Marcus's level, eye to eye, man to boy. "Because I wasn't fast enough once," he said quietly, "and I promised myself I'd never be too slow again." Marcus considered this with the gravity only children possess. That makes sense, he decided. Want to practice headers? Just like that. Crisis averted. Truth acknowledged and filed away in whatever mental cabinet kids keep for adult pain they don't fully understand. But Sarah understood, and that night, when Alexander lingered by her car after the game, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest for weeks. "Daniel. He played soccer too, didn't he?" Alexander's jaw tightened. Striker. Best on his team. Marcus plays striker. I know. Is that why you? I don't know. The admission came out rough. Honest. I don't know why I'm here, Sarah. I don't know why I keep showing up. I can't seem to stop. Maybe you don't have to figure it out. What do you mean? Maybe. She searched for the words, found them hiding behind a decade of single mom armor. Maybe you just keep showing up until the why doesn't matter anymore. He stared at her, long, searching, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. He didn't. Instead, he nodded, stepped back, let the moment pass. Tuesday? He asked. Kung Pao chicken? I'll get extra. You hate Kung Pao chicken. I really do. She watched him drive away, and realized, with a flutter of panic, that she'd started looking forward to Tuesdays, and Saturdays, and the random Wednesday text that said things like, Marcus mentioned needing new cleats, followed by a link to top-of-the-line soccer shoes that happened to be on sale. They weren't on sale. She checked, but she let Marcus keep them anyway, told herself it wasn't about accepting help. It was about not being an idiot when good things landed in your lap. The other nurses had a different theory. You're dating a billionaire, Tanya announced during their lunch break. I'm not dating anyone. You eat dinner together every Tuesday. He comes to your kids' soccer games. He knows your coffee order, your shoe size, and your opinion on the Oxford comma. How do you know about the Oxford comma thing? He asked. Said he was settling a bet, then spent 20 minutes listening to you rant about grammatical consistency. Tanya shook her head. That's not friendship, honey. That's courtship. People don't court anymore. This isn't the 1800s. Billionaires do. Trust me. I've seen the Hallmark movies. But it didn't feel like courtship. It felt like something stranger, quieter. Two broken people circling each other's damage, afraid to get too close, afraid to stay too far. Until the night, everything changed. Until one night, everything changed when Marcus had a seizure. Have you ever watched your child's body betray them? If you have, hit that subscribe button right now. Because you understand what Sarah Chen felt at 7:43 p.m. on a random Tuesday when her entire world collapsed again. If you haven't, count yourself lucky. And subscribe anyway, because what happens next will stay with you long after this video ends. It started like every other Tuesday. Alexander had brought Thai food instead of Chinese. Mixing things up, he said, which meant he'd discovered Sarah preferred pad Thai but had been too polite to mention it. Marcus was talking about school, something about a book report, a kid named Tyler who kept stealing his pencils, the usual chatter that filled Sarah's apartment like music on nights when loneliness felt too loud. Alexander listened, really listened. Not the way adults pretend to listen to children, nodding along while thinking about taxes or deadlines, but actually engaged, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. And then Tyler said, Marcus stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went strange, distant, like someone had flipped a switch behind them. Marcus? Sarah's nurse instincts fired before her brain caught up. Marcus. Honey, look at me. His body went rigid, back arched, arms locked. The pad thai scattered across the linoleum as he slid from his chair. Seizure. The word slammed through Sarah's mind like a freight train. Delayed trauma response from the accident. God, why didn't they catch this? Why didn't the scans show Marcus? She was on the floor before she knew she'd moved, turning him on his side, protecting his head, timing the seizure with her mental clock while everything inside her screamed. Alexander moved too. Not panicking, not freezing, just acting. He called 911 with steady hands, cleared the area of anything sharp, grabbed a pillow from the couch, and slid it under Marcus's head. 90 seconds, he reported calmly. Ambulance is 4 minutes out. How do you know how to? Daniel had epilepsy. Diagnosed at 6. Of course he knew. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into terrible place. The seizure stopped at 2 minutes. Marcus went limp, breathing shallow but steady, eyes fluttering but not focusing. Marcus? Baby, can you hear me? Marcus? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. Nothing. No response. Just the terrifying blankness of a child who'd gone somewhere she couldn't follow. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics who knew Sarah by name, who'd worked alongside her for years, now strapped her son to a gurney while she stood helpless on the sideline. Delayed complication from the head trauma? The ER doctor explained 2 hours later. The initial CT was clear, but sometimes these things develop slowly. We need to operate. Remove the pressure before it causes permanent damage. Operate. Brain surgery. Her baby. How long? She couldn't recognize her own voice. It came out hollow, mechanical. 6 hours. Maybe more. Success rate? The doctor hesitated. That hesitation was worse than any answer. We'll do everything we can. They wheeled Marcus through double doors that Sarah had walked through 1,000 times. Doors that led to operating rooms she knew by heart. But standing on this side, watching her son disappear behind them, she shattered. Not loudly, not dramatically, just crumbled. Right there in the hallway, knees giving out, world going dark around the edges. Someone caught her before she hit the floor. Alexander. He didn't speak, didn't offer empty reassurances, just wrapped his arms around her and held on while she fell apart against his chest. I can't lose him, she gasped between sobs. He's all I have. He's everything. I can't. You won't. You don't know that. No, he admitted. But I know you. And I know Marcus. And I know that little boy is the strongest kid I've ever met. He's going to fight. What if fighting isn't enough? Alexander pulled back, cupped her face in his hands, made her look at him. Then we fight too. Together, for as long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Not tonight. Not until we know he's okay. Why? The question tore out of her, raw and desperate. Why do you care so much? We're not your family. We're not your responsibility. Why are you still here? He didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, he guided her to the waiting room, sat her down, handed her coffee she didn't remember him getting, and stayed. But what happened in that waiting room would change everything between them. 4 hours into surgery, the waiting room empty except for them. Sarah had run out of tears. Alexander had run out of reassurances. The vending machine hummed in the corner. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat. Neither of them could look at it anymore. Tell me about Daniel. The request surprised them both. Sarah hadn't planned to say it. The words just escaped. Alexander tensed. Then, slowly, released. What do you want to know? Everything. Anything. I need to think about something else. Someone else's story. Just for a few minutes. He was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then he started talking. He was stubborn. Got that from Catherine. Refused to eat anything green until he was 7, then suddenly decided broccoli was his favorite food. Drove us crazy. A ghost of a smile. He loved soccer. Not because he was good at it. He wasn't, not really. But because he loved being part of a team. Loved the uniforms and the cheering and the orange slices at halftime. Marcus lives for those orange slices. Daniel would have liked Marcus. They would have been friends, I think. Both too brave for their own good. Both convinced they're invincible. Kids are supposed to feel invincible. That's our job, to let them believe it as long as possible. I failed at that job. The words came out quiet, heavy. I was in Tokyo when it happened. Some merger that felt like life or death at the time. Catherine called in the middle of negotiations. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail, because I thought she was just checking in. By the time I called back, Alexander. He was already gone. Died on impact, they said. Didn't feel anything. Like that's supposed to be comforting. Like knowing my son didn't suffer is supposed to make up for the fact that I wasn't there. Sarah reached over, took his hand. He gripped back like a drowning man. I started going to that corner a week later, every Tuesday, same time. I don't even know what I was looking for. Closure? Punishment? A chance to go back and do it differently? Maybe all three. Maybe, he exhaled slowly. But then Marcus ran into the street, and for 1 second, one perfect, terrible second, I saw Daniel. Same age, same desperate sprint towards something important. And I just moved. You saved him, I reacted. That's all. 5 years of standing on that corner, waiting for something to happen, and when it finally did, he shook his head. I didn't even think, didn't plan, just threw myself into traffic like an idiot, and somehow it worked. It wasn't luck. What was it then? I don't know. Sarah squeezed his hand. Maybe you were always supposed to be there. Maybe Daniel was supposed to be there too, through you. Maybe that's crazy, and I'm just desperate for meaning in a random universe. But you saved my son, Alexander. Whatever brought you to that corner, grief, guilt, habit, it gave me my whole world back. They sat in silence for a while, not uncomfortable, not heavy, just present. Two people holding space for each other's pain. I haven't been back, Alexander said suddenly. Back? To the corner. Since the accident. I haven't gone back. Why not? Because I think, he hesitated, I think I was looking for forgiveness, and somehow, holding your son in that street, hearing him breathe, feeling his heart beat against mine, I think I found it. Daniel would want you to forgive yourself. You didn't know him. I know you. And I know that any child lucky enough to have you as a father would want you to be happy, even if he couldn't be there to see it. Alexander's eyes glistened. He didn't cry. Sarah suspected he'd forgotten how, but something in his face cracked open, released. I haven't talked about him in 3 years, he whispered. Not like this. Not to anyone. Why not? Because it hurts. Because every time I say his name, I remember what I lost. Because keeping it inside felt safer than letting anyone see how broken I actually am. Alexander. Sarah turned to face him fully. You're not broken. You're grieving. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Broken things can't be fixed. But grief. Grief is supposed to be heavy. It's supposed to hurt. That's how you know the love was real. He stared at her. Long. Searching. And this time, Sarah was certain he was going to kiss her. But the door opened. Dr. Williams appeared, still in surgical scrubs, face unreadable. He's out of surgery, she said. Sarah's heart stopped. And? He's going to be fine. Full recovery expected. He's asking for you. The relief was so profound it felt like dying. Like every fear and worst-case scenario simultaneously released their grip and left her hollow. She stood on shaking legs, looked back at Alexander. Come with me, she said. That's for family. You are family. The words surprised them both, but she meant them. God help her, she meant every syllable. Alexander took her hand. They walked through those double doors together. Marcus woke up asking a question that would haunt them both. Is Alexander my dad now? Children see truth the way adults see traffic lights. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. Marcus Chen, 8 years old and fresh from brain surgery, wielded his truth like a weapon. Is Alexander my dad now? The question hung in the hospital room. Heavy, Impossible. 3 little words that detonated every unspoken feeling between 2 adults who'd been pretending they weren't falling in love. "Marcus, honey," Sarah started. "He's here like dads are here." Marcus's voice was sleepy but certain. "He brings food. He teaches me soccer. He looks at you the way Dad used to before he got mean. And he stayed during my surgery. Dad didn't even stay when I had the flu that one time. Your dad was busy. He was with Brittany. I heard you tell Grandma on the phone." Out of the mouths of babes, every carefully constructed lie, every protective fiction, shattered by a child who'd been listening when adults thought he wasn't. Alexander crouched beside the bed, eye to eye with Marcus, just like at the soccer field. "I'm not your dad," he said gently. "Your dad is still your dad, and I would never try to take his place." "But do you want to be?" "Marcus." "It's a yes or no question." Alexander glanced at Sarah. Something passed between them, something that felt like the edge of a cliff. "I want to be part of your life," Alexander said carefully. "Whatever that looks like, whatever your mom decides is okay. I care about you very much, Marcus, and I care about your mom. But those are big feelings that adults have to figure out slowly. Do you understand?" Marcus considered this with surgical precision. "So, you like her?" "I like her? Not just friend, like..." "Marcus, that's not..." "Because she likes you too. She smiles different when you're coming over, and she wears the good perfume." "Oh my God." Sarah buried her face in her hands. "I'm being interrogated by an 8-year-old in a hospital gown. I'm just asking questions. That's what they teach us in school. Ask questions to understand things. Maybe some questions can wait until you're healed?" "I am healed. Dr. Williams said so. My brain is fine." He pointed at his head. "Better than fine. Superior." She said no such thing. She implied it. With her eyes. Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the relationship landmines currently exploding around her, Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. The sound bubbled up unbidden, and she couldn't stop it. Alexander laughed too. That rusty, unpracticed sound that was becoming less rusty every day. Marcus grinned. Mission accomplished. "I like when you laugh," he told Alexander. "You should do it more. It makes Mom less stressed." "I'll work on that. Also, you should bring pizza next time instead of Thai food. Mom pretends she likes Thai food, but she really likes pizza better." "Marcus." "What? I'm helping." And just like that, the impossible question became manageable. Not answered, not resolved, but tucked away for later, when the adults could figure out what like actually meant for 2 people who'd been alone so long they'd forgotten what together felt like. But the universe, it turns out, had other plans. And that's when his brother decided to intervene. James Reeves arrived on a Wednesday evening. Sarah had just gotten home from work. Marcus was at his grandmother's for the night. She was planning a bath, a glass of wine, and precisely 0 human interaction. The knock on her door ruined all 3. "Miss Chen." James didn't wait for an invitation, pushed past her into the apartment like he owned it, which, technically, his family probably could have. "We need to talk about my brother. How did you get this address?" "I have resources." "That's not important." He surveyed her modest living room with barely concealed disdain. "What's important is that you understand the situation you've wandered into." "I haven't wandered into anything." "Really?" He turned. Same sharp features as Alexander, same blue eyes, but cold where Alexander's were warm. Calculating where Alexander's were wounded. "My brother has been spending considerable time with you and your son. Time he should be spending on the company. Time that the board has noticed. Alexander's personal life is none of my business. But it is the board's business. And mine. Reeves Industries has shareholders, responsibilities. We can't afford to have our CEO haunting hospital wards and attending children's soccer games like like some what? Like some father? James's jaw tightened. My brother is not well, Miss Chen. He hasn't been well since Daniel died. And this fixation on your family is just the latest symptom of a deeper problem. You think caring about people is a symptom? I think obsession is a symptom, and Alexander has a pattern. He stepped closer, looming. Patricia Martinez, Angela White, Kumiko Tanaka, all single mothers, all with young sons, all abandoned once Alexander got bored or distracted or reminded too painfully of what he'd lost. He didn't abandon them. He helped them. He used them to work through his grief, and when they served their purpose, he moved on. James's smile was sharp as glass. You're different, you think. Special. But you're not. You're just the latest project. And when you've outlived your usefulness, get out. Be reasonable. I said get out, now, before I call the police. James straightened, smoothed his tie. The picture of composure? The board meets next month. To discuss Alexander's fitness to lead, his eccentricities will be examined, his judgment will be questioned, and your presence in his life, you, a nurse with a child and an ex-husband and a mountain of debt, will be used as evidence of impaired decision-making. Evidence of what? Caring about regular people? Evidence of weakness, of distraction, of priorities that don't align with shareholder interests. James headed for the door. Think about what's best for everyone, Miss Chen, your son included. Association with my brother may feel special now, but when the board strips him of his position, and they will, you'll be left with nothing. No billionaire, no protection, just the scandal of being the woman who brought down Alexander Reeves. He left behind a business card and the faint smell of expensive cologne. Sarah stood in her kitchen for a long time after, shaking, not from fear, from rage. Because how dare he? How dare anyone try to weaponize love, try to pathologize kindness, try to turn human connection into corporate liability? Her phone buzzed. Alexander? Marcus asleep? Found a soccer video he might like. She stared at the text, at the simple domesticity of it, at the care hidden behind casual words. Come over, she typed back. We need to talk. About what? Everything. If you've ever stood up for someone when standing was terrifying, drop a comment below, because Sarah Chen was about to do something that would change her life forever, and she was absolutely terrified. The boardroom of Reeves Industries looked exactly like intimidation felt. Mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows, 20 faces that had never worried about rent or childcare or whether the grocery budget could stretch another week. Sarah wasn't supposed to be here. Neither was Marcus, or the 17 families who'd followed them up the elevator, clutching their own stories like shields. What is the meaning of this? James demanded, half rising from his seat. This is a private board meeting. This is a character assassination, Sarah interrupted, and I'm here to provide witnesses for the defense. You have no standing. Then arrest me, call security, make a scene. She stepped forward. But these families have a right to speak, and you're going to listen. The board president, an older woman with steel-gray hair and calculating eyes, held up a hand. Let her speak. This should be enlightening. One by one, the families took the floor. He paid for my daughter's cancer treatment. Never asked for anything. Never even let us say thank you. Covered our mortgage when my husband passed. Showed up at the funeral. Held my son while he cried. Funded my boy's therapy after his father left. Checked in every month. Still does. Sat with my grandmother during her final days. Read to her. Held her hand. A stranger, treating her like family. Story after story, family after family. A mosaic of kindness that James Reeves had tried to paint as pathology. The board shifted, whispered. The narrative they'd been fed didn't match the people standing before them. Finally, Sarah stepped forward. You want to talk about fitness to lead? Let's talk about leadership. Alexander Reeves has spent 5 years turning his worst tragedy into a mission. Not for publicity, not for tax breaks, but because he couldn't save his own son, so he saves everyone else's. Miss Chen, James started. I'm not finished. Her voice didn't waver. Couldn't afford to. You call it obsession. I call it purpose. You call it weakness. I call it the kind of strength that board meetings can't measure. And you call his interest in my family a liability? She laughed, sharp and bitter. My son is alive because Alexander Reeves threw himself in front of a bus. He stood in traffic for a child he didn't know, risked his life for a stranger. What have any of you risked lately, besides quarterly profits? The room went silent. Marcus stepped forward. 8 years old, 4 feet tall, utterly unintimidated. Mr. Alexander isn't trying to be my dad, he said clearly. He's just trying to be good, really good. The kind of good that makes you want to be good too. He looked around the room. Maybe you should try it sometime. The vote took 3 minutes, unanimous, in Alexander's favor. James Reeves resigned from the board before the meeting officially ended. Something about pursuing other opportunities. No one believed him. No one cared. Sarah found Alexander in the hallway afterward. He looked shell-shocked, undone. You came, he said. You brought everyone. You? I fought for you, the way you've been fighting for us. But why? After everything James said, after all the reasons you should have walked away. Because you're worth fighting for, Alexander. You and your broken heart and your Tuesday night dinners and your terrible taste in Chinese food. You're worth it. He kissed her then, right there in the hallway, with board members streaming past and Marcus making exaggerated gagging noises and 17 families pretending not to watch. It was messy, imperfect, long overdue. It was exactly right. But the biggest surprise came 6 months later. 6 months. That's how long it took for whatever this is to become something neither of them could deny. 6 months of Tuesday dinners that expanded to Thursday, lunches to Saturday, breakfasts to I have a key to your apartment and you have one to mine. 6 months of Marcus deciding Alexander wasn't his dad, but was something equally important, his person, his safe person, his teach me chess and help with homework and make mom laugh person. 6 months of Sarah learning that Alexander sang in the shower, badly, enthusiastically, usually 80s power ballads. 6 months of Alexander discovering that Sarah talked in her sleep, mostly nonsense, but occasionally grocery lists. He started keeping a notepad by the bed just in case. They didn't rush, didn't push. Let the thing between them grow at its own pace, like a plant that had been waiting years for the right conditions. Until a random Tuesday. Nothing special, no anniversary or milestone, just Chinese food containers scattered across Sarah's kitchen table, Marcus doing homework, Alexander helping him puzzle through fractions. I love you, Alexander said, just like that. No build-up, no dramatic music, just a man looking up from a math worksheet like he'd commented on the weather. Sarah dropped her chopsticks. What? I love you. I've been trying to figure out the right time to say it, but there isn't one. There's just now. And I love you. Both of you. Marcus looked up. Does this mean you're finally getting married? Because Tyler at school said you guys were definitely getting married, and I said I didn't know, and he called me a liar. Marcus, what? It's a valid question, Alexander laughed. reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait, plan something elaborate. Flowers and music and probably a skywriter, because I have more money than sense. He opened the box. Inside, a simple ring. Elegant. Perfect. But then I realized that's not us. We're not elaborate. We're Tuesday night takeout and Saturday soccer and midnight coffee in hospital break rooms. We're messy and unexpected and nothing like I planned. He slid off his chair, onto one knee. Sarah Chen, I didn't mean to fall in love with you. I was just trying to survive, same as you. But somewhere between the Chinese food and the soccer games, and your son asking if I was his dad now, I forgot how to survive without you. Alexander, I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not trying to replace what I lost. I'm asking if you want to build something new. Together, the three of us. A family that doesn't make sense on paper but works anyway. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. She didn't bother wiping them. You're proposing over Chinese takeout. Would you prefer Italian? I hate Italian. I know. That's why I brought Chinese. She laughed, cried, pulled him up and kissed him so thoroughly that Marcus started making gagging noises again. Is that a yes? Alexander asked against her lips. That's a yes, you ridiculous man. Yes to all of it. Marcus pumped his fist. Finally! I'm telling Tyler tomorrow. He owes me a candy bar. You bet on whether I'd get married? I bet you'd say yes before Christmas. It's November. I won, he grinned. Also, I call being ring bearer. The wedding happened 3 months later. Not in a grand cathedral, not on a tropical beach, in the hospital chapel at St. Mary's, because where else? Where else would they pledge forever except the place where they'd found each other? Where Alexander had read to dying children and Sarah had kept them both alive with midnight coffee and stubborn hope. Catherine came, cried happy tears, hugged Sarah so hard she nearly cracked a rib. The 17 families filled every pew. Patients watched from wheelchairs. Nurses who'd worked night shifts with Sarah served as unofficial bridesmaids. Marcus gave a speech. He'd prepared it himself, practiced in front of the mirror for weeks. Alexander saved my life, he said, standing on a chair to reach the microphone. But I think we saved his too. Mom says that's what families do. They save each other. Over and over. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Even when you think you're too broken to be saved. He looked at Alexander, at his mom, at the unlikely family they'd built from grief and hope and really good Chinese food. I used to think dads were people who left, he continued. But now I know that dads are people who stay, who show up, who throw themselves in front of buses because they'd rather get hurt than watch you get hurt. He raised his juice box. To Alexander, my not dad, my person, the best accidental family member I ever crashed into. The room laughed, cried, raised their glasses. And Alexander, the billionaire who'd spent 5 years standing on a street corner waiting to die, finally understood what it meant to live. 3 years later, the corner where Daniel died became something new. A children's safety garden. Bright colors, soft surfaces, educational signs about traffic awareness. A bronze plaque that read, "In memory of Daniel Reeves, who taught us that every child deserves someone who'd throw themselves in front of traffic for them." Sarah brought flowers every year on the anniversary. Alexander brought soccer balls for the local youth league that met there now. And Marcus, 11 years old, taller every day, still sleeping with that stuffed elephant named Alexander Jr., brought his little sister. She'd arrived 18 months after the wedding. Surprise pregnancy, another thing they hadn't planned. Another beautiful complication in their wonderfully messy life. They named her Danielle. Because Daniel gave us to each other, Sarah said, holding her daughter for the first time. In a way, he saved us all. Alexander wept, properly, fully. The tears he'd held back for 8 years finally falling, not from grief this time, from joy. So there you have it. A love story that started with a bus and a soccer ball and a man who'd forgotten how to be alive. That grew through Chinese takeout and hospital hallways, and an 8-year-old matchmaker who was really just looking for his candy bar bet to pay off. Would you have taken the chance? Would you have let someone in after all that pain? Drop a comment and tell me your story. The unexpected love, the accidental family, the person who showed up until you couldn't imagine them leaving. Because here's what I've learned. Watching Sarah and Alexander build their improbable forever. Sometimes love isn't a lightning strike. Sometimes it's just showing up, again and again, until showing up becomes staying, until staying becomes home. And if you made it this far, then you understand something most people never learn. The best love stories aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that crash into us on random Tuesdays, when we're too tired and too broken to see them coming. But we let them in anyway, because maybe, just maybe, that's what we were standing on our own corners waiting for all along. Someone to finally take us home. Subscribe if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And remember, every ending is just another beginning in disguise. Even this one. Especially this one. This was Obsidian Romance, where hearts remember what money forgets.